Welcome back everyone to the channel, and it is time for the F1 predictions. The video is going out on the day of the Bahrain Grand Prix practice sessions on Thursday. So yeah, it is time to make my predictions for how the season is gonna go. It's gonna be a kind of controversial and wild video, but hopefully you guys enjoy it nonetheless. But make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below for more F1 content, and let's get into my predictions for the season.
Yuki, calm down. Okay, we'll improve for the next.
Coming in number 10 is a quite interesting name. AlphaTauri, I think, are not going to be able to push as high up as they have in the past. I think with the new regulations, AlphaTauri has been struggling to catch up. They've been driving last season with a car that was way below par, and I think that's kind of shown in the Drive to Survive documentary. Of course, we've seen Pierre Gasly say it is now time in his career to be pushing for the championship, pushing for higher positions in the championship. So he has moved to Alpine, and with Nick de Vries coming in, who is of course a decent driver. We've seen that with his debut with Williams last season when he came in for the for Alex Albon, who was ill at the time, and he's been absolutely brilliant. But I think still with two rookies essentially, or one rookie and Yuki Tsunoda, who's now filling a seat that is of great importance, a leadership seat, I think there's going to be still some kind of nitpicking and some gears not working right in the team, and I think that's ultimately going to cost them a lot of points. So I think AlphaTauri are not in it to win it, and I think they'll be in P10 by the end of the season.
Can someone help me, or am I alone in park for me?
Now in P9, I got the Williams team, who have been showing some brilliant improvements in preseason, and also the trajectory of their car, the trajectory of their performance has been on the upside since last season. Like towards the end of the season, when Jos Capito was still with the team, we saw that the team was gradually improving. The car was slowly getting better. Alex Albon performing exceptionally well, and then we had Latifi, of course, struggle in the car. And I think with the driver change, with Logan Sargent coming in, I think they're going to try and push the car to its limits and try to get some points. Alex Albon has been very close to P10 a couple times, so I think Williams will be scratching away at some points. And throughout the season, of course, we never know when safety cars will be coming into play. Maybe there'll be a huge shunt, which God forbid, I hope no one gets involved in such a huge accident, but there are opportunities for such incidents to happen. So perhaps Williams will be able to take advantage of the situation and scrape away some points and secure P9.
Okay, what damage do you have?
Talent.
Also with P8 is a controversial take, and that is McLaren. McLaren, of course, a team that was fighting for the midfield, P4, P5, but with preseason, it started to show that McLaren weren't up there. They were not prepared for the season ahead, so hopefully they turn things around really quickly, and that is what we saw last season with Lando Norris and Ricciardo being in the back end of the field, P16, P17, and then all of a sudden finding themselves in the points by the end of the season. So there is a possibility that McLaren will be improving throughout this season, but I think ultimately, considering how slow they were with their upgrades, how slow the car looked, how incomplete the car looked, I think they're going to struggle too much in the early stages to score any significant points, and then ultimately cost them any chance of getting in the midfield. So ultimately, I think P8 will be the spot where they will end up by the end of the season.
He does not fox smash my door. Tell him that.
P7 is an interesting one. Haas have been showing exceptional improvement recently, and also with last season, preseason testing looked great for them. They had a car that gelled well, and I think Magnussen and Hülkenberg were really pushing the car to see where the limits were. And I think, of course, there will be sandbagging and preseason testing. The trajectory of the car, again, has been really good. We've seen Magnussen perform well. He got P1 in Brazil with qualifying. Of course, the car started to show its true colors as the race went on. Like, they were good in sprinting, but they were not so good with the endurance races. Even the sprint race is some kind of endurance race, you could say. So we saw Magnussen fall down the grid, but still, I think the car is showing pace. And with the drivers now on a more similar level, I think Hülkenberg replacing Schumacher may have been a good choice for Günther Steiner, mainly because Schumacher has been making so many mistakes throughout the early stages of the season, maybe even closer to the end of last season as well, crashing the car multiple times and also not performing as well as Magnussen did. So it's a bit of a shame to see the Schumacher name go, but still I think with two strong solid drivers, Hülkenberg and Magnussen, they'll be able to scrape away some big points to secure P7.
Tell Esteban to defend.
Like a lion.
Alpine, of course, is an interesting team with Drive to Survive drama as well. Otmar Zafnauer losing Piastri, fumbling that contract, and then ultimately not getting the drivers he wanted until he settled with Pierre Gasly. Again, a great driver who's been outperforming in the AlphaTauri, and of course the car is prepared to be pushing for the midfield spots and maybe even the upper parts of the midfield. But I think ultimately Alpine have not been performing greatly in preseason testing. The car didn't look great. They were slow around some corners there in Bahrain, so I'm wondering if that is a technical issue or if that's sandbagging. Not quite sure. But right now, with the performance we've seen in the Alpine last season as well as this season, I think the shuffling and the drama is going to cost the team a little and ultimately land them in P6 with only some solid points secured throughout the season.
Well then guys, good job. Just we had good pace.
Now P5 is Alfa Romeo. I think Alfa Romeo are the dark horses or just the quiet silent killers, because they are literally not talked much on the grid except for Zhou's big shunt last season in the British Grand Prix. I think Alfa Romeo have avoided the press quite well, and they've been improving the car significantly in the shadows. And I think Bottas and Zhou pairing up again with Vasseur leaving and new management coming through, I think they'll start gelling well since the early start of the season. We've seen the car performing quite well in preseason testing, and we'll see how it actually performs in racing conditions. But I have a feeling that Alfa Romeo will be able to possibly get some podiums throughout the season and also secure enough points to essentially get the middle of the field in P5.
How the f did we get it so wrong?
Now this is an interesting one. I think there's a hype train going around Aston Martin. I've seen some people say that Aston Martin might be pushing for the championship this season. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's still too many bureaucratic strongholding and limitations that's going to cost the team ultimately. There's not much creativity in the team because of such restrictions, but the car that they've built right now is quite solid, and I think Aston Martin will be pushing for some podiums, that's for sure. But I don't think they're going to be at the level of Red Bull or Ferrari or Mercedes. As you can tell, those are the teams remaining on my list. But yeah, Aston Martin will be performing quite well, will be shocking some faces and some people. And I think Alonso was a great signing for them with Vettel leaving. They needed experience in the other car. Lance Stroll will be performing in his best interest, but Alonso, I think, will be the one that's really outshining in the team. So I think in the end, Aston Martin will be able to secure enough points for P4.
No, Mikey, no, Mikey, that was so not right.
Now, coming up to the championship contenders, I'd say not really all of them are championship contenders. I'm going to say P3 is Mercedes. I think they are making the right moves, making the right calls, and of course that dark black Mercedes livery is back, the one that shocked the world in 2020. I think the black Mercedes is looking quite sleek and nice, and I also think that it shows their determination of what's to come. Not only is it weight reduction with less paint on the car, but also I think they've got the mentality of the black car era where they're like, we want to be championship leaders, we want to be pushing for that championship, and the mentality is there. Toto Wolff showed that all of last season. Towards the end of the season, when the car started improving, he was like, this car is the worst car we've ever built, so let's keep it as a memory. That was also in Drive to Survive, if you guys saw that. And I think the mentality is there. Lewis Hamilton sticking with the team until he gets his next world championship, I'm sure, and then George Russell has been outperforming Lewis Hamilton sometimes throughout last season, so I'm sure the driver pairing will be up to top shape, and I think Mercedes will be able to scrape away some podiums and points, but only enough to secure P3. Ferrari is a big question mark this season. I think they are looking solid, but that was even the case last season. But it all comes down to, will they get their strategy right? Will their drivers drive cleanly? And will they be quite, focused with the drive and not crashing as much? And then is the durability of the Ferrari power unit there? I think that all of it will be gelling together this season. We've seen a car that performed very well in preseason testing, car that could even compete with the Red Bull car throughout the season. But what's very important is to get the strategy right. You guys may have heard a couple times throughout my videos in the channel that Ferrari always screw up the strategy. Like, why do you guys screw up the strategy? If they didn't screw up the strategy, I feel like Ferrari could have pushed Red Bull for the championship last season. But I think the strategy just cost them too many points, too many decisions that dropped them out of the points sometimes. And yeah, ultimately it cost them a chance of pushing Red Bull to the limit. So this season, I feel like they will be able to do it with Fred Vasseur in the team. I think they've got a I'm not taking any BS kind of leader in the team. So hopefully that'll shine and give Ferrari an opportunity to challenge for the championship and keep Red Bull on their toes.
Oh my god, guys! I love you so much.
And of course, lastly, I think Red Bull will be ultimately leading the championship throughout most of the season and ultimately win it at the end. Again, I think it's going to be very tight between Red Bull and Ferrari. I think it may go down to the wire just like it did with Verstappen and Hamilton in the 2021 season. I think it's going to be close, but sadly, I don't know if Ferrari have it in them. I mean, it's the first season with Fred Vasseur. I don't think Ferrari's going to gel that quickly and ultimately win the championship in their first season of Fred Vasseur's leadership, but I think they'll be up there. Leclerc's been looking nice and Sainz has been looking quite pacey as well, so I think the duo will be working well together. And ultimately for Red Bull, they have a solid car at the start of the season, and I'm starting to wonder if that reduction in wind tunnel and CFD simulator time is going to cost them. It looks not likely considering how strong their car is right now in preseason testing. There were some hiccups, I understand, but still they showed ultimately that they are championship winners and they're going to try and keep the throne. So right now I think Christian Horner is going to have the advantage going into the first couple races, and I think they'll have a slight edge over the rest of the field throughout the rest of the season, especially against Ferrari, Mercedes and Aston Martin. So ultimately Red Bull will secure the championship yet again. Now coming to the business end of the video, which is of course the Drivers' Championship. I think I'll just name my top 5. And I think the most important one would be P5, because I feel like the top 4 are kind of there. You can kind of hint at who might be in the top 4, but I think in P5 is going to be Fernando Alonso. I think he is actually going to perform exceptionally well and push the car to its limits, and I think Fernando will be able to challenge a lot of the other drivers throughout the season. And I think the top 5 is going to be relatively close, very close, and I think maybe even Fernando might get higher than P5, but ultimately I feel like he'll be only to get P5 because of Aston Martin's kind of bureaucratic craziness with Lawrence Stroll at the helm. But I still think Alonso's looking pacey for a rookie, and yeah, I think he's gonna perform well. In P4 I've got Carlos Sainz. I feel like it's gonna be a battle between the Red Bull and Ferrari cars, but I think ultimately Sainz is gonna lose out a couple points. Of course Ferrari are going to prioritize Leclerc, who is the first driver and also the greater prospect of winning the championship. We've seen Leclerc really push Verstappen sometimes in the early stages of last season, and I think that's going to continue in this season. So with Leclerc being the priority of the team, I feel like Sainz is going to lose out on some points because of strategy decisions or some kind of tire decision that will benefit Leclerc. So ultimately I feel Sainz will be good and really pushing the team, but only enough for P4. In P3 I've gone Perez, Sergio Perez. I think it's going to be another P2 runners-up chaos, and I think there may be some drama involved within the team. I hope that Perez and Verstappen have solved their grievances throughout the past season and start afresh in this new season, but I don't know. I still think there may be some drama involved between the duo. We've seen it happen last season, but ultimately I think that's going to cost Perez a P2 yet again this season, and Leclerc will get P2. So yeah, Leclerc gets P2, and that's mainly because I feel like Leclerc is going to push Verstappen. I think it's going to be like a 10-point gap going into Abu Dhabi, maybe even less. I feel like this will be the season for Ferrari to see an absolute challenge for the championship, and I'm not going to say Leclerc's going to win it because that's bad luck. Knock on wood. I hope that we get a absolute great battle between Leclerc and Verstappen for the championship. And of course that leads me to P1, the winner, the drivers' champion of the world. I think that's going to be Max Verstappen yet again. Very close between Leclerc and Verstappen, but I feel like the Red Bull is going to perform slightly better than the Ferrari at the end of the season and ultimately allow Verstappen to secure the world championship yet again. And yeah, I think that's going to be a 3 in a row, a 3-peat. Now just a little bit about the MVP and the biggest flop of the season. I feel like the biggest flop of the season will be Lance Stroll. I think he may not perform as well, and I think we're going to see this kind of huge gap form between Alonso and Stroll. We've seen that with Lando Norris and Ricciardo, and we've seen it with Latifi and Albon, kind of like this huge performance gap, given the same equipment, same mechanical devices, and have this talent gap between the two drivers. And I think Alonso will ultimately outperform Lance Stroll so many times throughout the season that it's going to be quite visible. And I think Lance Stroll may score some points, and I think he'll be up there in the points, but I ultimately think he's going to flop compared to Fernando Alonso, who's been performing exceptionally well recently at 41 years old. Greatest rookie to ever join F1, I guess. But yeah, I think Alonso will outperform Lance Stroll by a mile. Now, the biggest MVP, the biggest kind of shock on the grid, I think will come from Nick de Vries. I think Nick de Vries is an absolute unit of a driver. He's great in the car. We've seen that with Williams. He had to fill in at a moment's notice as Albon was ill, and bang, puts out a P9 for Williams. Like, the Williams car wasn't a point contender at all, and then all of a sudden he puts it up there on his first drive and his debut of F1. Of course, he has so many years of experience with Formula E and Formula 2, Formula 3, and he's born to drive well, and I think he's going to outperform Yuki Tsunoda this season, and I think he's ultimately going to be another hot prospect on the grid, and hopefully that leads to some good things in his future, and I'd love to see more of him. And I think this season he's going to really show his colors and really shine in the AlphaTauri. So yeah, that brings us to the end and the conclusion of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Again, these are my predictions. Let me know what your predictions are down below in the comments, and of course the season's underway, so hope you guys enjoyed the start of the season. Bahrain Grand Prix is going to be an absolute blast. We've waited so many months for this new season, and I hope that it brings us a lot of entertainment and some joy. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe using the red button down below, and hit the notification bell as well so you're notified as soon as I upload next. Thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. See you guys in the next video.